The sound of a slap echoed through the elegant dining room of the Silverton mansion, silencing the clattering of silverware and the polite conversation that had filled the air moments before. Zara Silverton's cheek stung as she stared defiantly at her father, whose face had turned an alarming shade of crimson beneath his well-groomed silver beard. "I will not hear another word about that man," Richard Silverton growled, his voice low but trembling with barely contained rage. "No daughter of mine will associate with an immigrant storekeeper's son. We built this town, and I will not have our name dragged through the mud." It was 1875 in Las Lunas, New Mexico territory, and Zara's world was crumbling around her. At 20 years old, she had fallen in love with Mateo Vasquez, the son of the town's general store owner who had immigrated from Spain 15 years earlier. Mateo was kind, intelligent, and had dreams of becoming a doctor, but none of that mattered to the Silvertons, who counted themselves among the territory's elite. "Father, please," Zara pleaded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Mateo is a good man. His father owns a successful business, and Mateo himself is studying medicine through correspondence courses from Enough." Her father slammed his fist on the mahogany table, causing the crystal glasses to tremble. "The Vasquez family are foreigners who barely speak proper English. They will never be our equals, and I will not allow my daughter to sully our bloodline with such a match." Zara's mother, Eleanor, reached for her husband's arm. "Richard, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There is nothing to discuss," he interrupted, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "You have two choices, daughter. End this inappropriate dalliance immediately, or leave this house and never return. The Silverton name and fortune will be dead to you." Zara felt her younger sister Catherine's wide eyes on her, and her brother William's uncomfortable shifting beside her. The servants had discreetly withdrawn to the kitchen, but she knew they could hear every word. "You cannot be serious," Zara whispered, though she knew her father was not a man given to idle threats. "I have never been more serious in my life," Richard Silverton declared. "You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision." That night, Zara packed a single valise with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face as she folded her simplest dresses and undergarments, knowing that the elegant gowns and jewelry that had been part of her privileged life would now be left behind. A soft knock at her bedroom door made her start. "It's me," Catherine whispered, slipping into the room. At 18, her sister was the only one who had shown any understanding of Zara's feelings for Mateo. "You're really leaving, aren't you?" Zara nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Here." Catherine pressed a small velvet pouch into Zara's hand. "Mother's grandmother's earrings. She gave them to me last Christmas, but you should have them. And this," she added a small roll of bills, "is from my savings. It's not much, but it might help until you and Mateo can." Zara embraced her sister fiercely. "Thank you, Kathy. I'll find a way to write to you. Be careful. Father means what he says. Once you leave, he won't allow your name to be spoken in this house." Dawn was just breaking when Zara slipped out the back door of the only home she had ever known. She had written a note to Mateo, asking him to meet her at the edge of town, but when she arrived at their designated meeting place, he wasn't there. Instead, a boy she recognized as one of the stable hands from the Vasquez property approached her cautiously. "Miss Silverton?" he asked, his voice hushed. "I have a message from Mateo." Her heart sank as she took the folded paper. Mateo's handwriting was shaky, unlike his usual careful script. "My dearest Zara, my father received a visit from yours yesterday evening. There were threats made against my family's business and my father's residency status. I cannot allow my family to suffer because of our love. With a heavy heart, I must tell you that I am leaving Las Lunas this morning on the eastbound train. My father believes it best for everyone if I complete my medical studies in Boston, far from New Mexico. Please forgive me for not being strong enough to stand against your father's influence. I will always carry you in my heart. Forever yours. Mateo. Zara's legs gave way beneath her, and she sank to the ground, the letter clutched in her trembling hands. Not only had she lost her family, but now Mateo was gone too. Her father's reach had extended further than she'd imagined possible. Miss. The stable boy shifted uncomfortably. Are you all right? She wasn't all right. She would never be all right again. But she forced herself to stand, brushing the dust from her skirt with as much dignity as she could muster. When does the next train leave Las Lunas? She asked, her voice hollow. The westbound train to Arizona Territory leaves at noon, miss. Zara nodded. Thank you. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, but she couldn't stay in Las Lunas. Not with her family's rejection fresh in her heart, and not with the whispers that would surely follow once word of her disgrace spread through town. The West was said to be a place of new beginnings. Perhaps she could find hers there. The train platform was buzzing with activity when Zara arrived. She purchased a ticket to Prescott in the Arizona Territory, using a portion of the money Catherine had given her. As she waited for boarding to begin, she felt utterly alone among the crowd of travelers, merchants, and railway workers. Last call for the westbound train to Prescott. The conductor shouted, and Zara clutched her small valise tightly as she moved toward the passenger car. Just as she was about to board, a commotion near the freight cars caught her attention. A tall man in dusty clothes was arguing with a railway worker, gesturing emphatically at a magnificent chestnut horse that was clearly reluctant to be loaded into a stock car. That horse ain't going to fit in there with all them cattle, the man insisted, his voice carrying across the platform. He needs his own space or he'll be half dead by Prescott. That'll cost you extra, mister, the railway worker drawled, unimpressed. Then I'll ride alongside the train, the man declared, turning toward his horse. You can't do that, the worker protested. Company regulations, watch me, the stranger said, tipping his hat as he swung up into his saddle with fluid grace. Despite her misery, Zara found herself smiling at the man's defiance. There was something admirable about his refusal to bend to rules that made no sense. As if feeling her gaze, the rider turned in her direction, and for a brief moment their eyes met. He nodded politely before turning his horse away from the station, presumably to find the trail that would run parallel to the train tracks. Once aboard, Zara found herself seated across from an elderly woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Holloway. "Traveling alone, dear?" the woman asked, her eyes kind but curious. "Yes," Zara replied simply, not wanting to invite further questions. "Brave girl, I'm visiting my son in Prescott. He's the deputy sheriff there." Mrs. Holloway studied Zara's face. "You look like you've had a difficult morning." Zara's composure threatened to crack at the woman's gentleness. "I've had a difficult life, it seems," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Holloway patted her hand sympathetically but asked no more questions, allowing Zara to turn her attention to the landscape passing outside the window. As the train gathered speed, Zara caught occasional glimpses of a rider on a chestnut horse, keeping pace with the train at a distance. The journey to Prescott took 2 days, with an overnight stop at a small station where passengers could seek accommodation in the nearby town. Zara spent a restless night in a modest boarding house, her dreams filled with her father's angry face and Mateo's retreating back. When the train finally pulled into Prescott Station, Zara disembarked with leaden feet. She had no plan beyond finding work and lodging, and the busy frontier town was intimidating after the familiar confines of Las Lunas. "You take care now, dear Mrs. Holloway said as they parted ways on the platform. "If you need anything, my son's name is Sheriff James Holloway. Just tell him his mother sent you." Zara thanked the kind woman and turned to face the bustling town. She had enough money for perhaps 2 weeks of modest accommodations, and then she would need to find work. With her education and refined manners, she hoped to secure a position as a teacher or perhaps a clerk in one of the shops that lined Prescott's Main Street. As she walked away from the station, a commotion behind her made her turn. The man with the chestnut horse had arrived, and his animal was causing a stir by prancing nervously among the crowd. "Easy, Thunder," the man soothed, his deep voice carrying over the noise. "We're here now." Zara couldn't help but watch as he expertly calmed the spirited horse, his movements confident and gentle. In the clear light of day, she could see that he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair visible beneath his wide-brimmed hat. When he dismounted and led his horse away, Zara shook herself out of her reverie and continued her search for lodging. After inquiring at several establishments, she finally found a room at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who had come to Arizona from California after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. $5 a week, includes breakfast and dinner, Mrs. Chen told her briskly. "No men in the rooms, no liquor, and I expect you in by 10 o'clock unless you have work that keeps you out later." "That sounds fair," Zara agreed, relieved to have found a place to stay. "Do you know where I might find work in town?" Mrs. Chen regarded her thoughtfully. "You have the look of education about you. The school might need help, or perhaps the newspaper office. If not, the Silver Dollar Hotel often needs maids and servers." Armed with these suggestions, Zara spent the rest of the day seeking employment. The school had no positions available, and the newspaper editor took one look at her fine hands and doubtfully told her the work was dirty and demanding. By late afternoon, she found herself at the Silver Dollar Hotel, where the manager hired her on the spot to serve in the dining room. "You start tomorrow at 6, he told her. "Wear black if you have it and keep your hair tidy." As Zara left the hotel, the setting sun cast long shadows on the dusty street. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically, and the thought of returning to her small room at Mrs. Chen's was suddenly overwhelming. On impulse, she turned down a side street that led toward a small park she had noticed earlier. The park was mostly empty as dusk approached, with just a few people hurrying home for their evening meals. Zara found a bench beneath a cottonwood tree and sat down, finally allowing her tears to flow freely. Everything she had known, her family, her home, her plans for the future with Mateo, was gone. She was alone in a strange town, with only her meager savings and a job serving food to strangers to sustain her. "Miss, are you all right?" The deep voice startled her, and Zara hastily wiped her tears with her handkerchief before looking up. The man with the chestnut horse stood before her, his expression concerned. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a warm brown and a faint scar ran along his jawline. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the polite response ingrained by years of social training. He smiled slightly, clearly not believing her. "No offense, madam, but you don't look fine." Despite herself, Zara gave a watery laugh. "No, I suppose I don't." "I'm Tucker Owens," he said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "I noticed you on the train platform back in Las Lunas." "Zara Silverton," she replied, then winced at giving her family name so readily. It meant nothing now, except perhaps trouble if her father's influence extended to Prescott. Tucker gestured to the empty space beside her. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Zara nodded. It was improper to sit alone with a strange man as evening approached, but her life had already departed so dramatically from propriety that this small transgression seemed insignificant. "Are you visiting Prescott or planning to stay?" he asked, settling his tall frame beside her. "Staying, I hope. I've just secured employment at the Silver Dollar Hotel." Tucker's eyebrows rose. "As a server, you don't seem." He trailed off, apparently thinking better of whatever he had been about to say. "I don't seem like someone who would wait tables." Zara finished for him, a hint of defiance in her voice. "Life doesn't always turn out as we expect, Mr. Owens." "That's the truth," he agreed, his expression softening. "And it's just Tucker, if you don't mind." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the last streaks of sunset faded from the sky. "It gets cold quickly at night in these parts," Tucker finally said. "May I walk you to wherever you're staying?" Zara hesitated. This man was a stranger, yet there was something trustworthy about his direct gaze and straightforward manner. And after the events of the past 2 days, her judgment of character couldn't possibly be worse than it already was. "Thank you," she said, rising from the bench. "I'm staying at Mrs. Chen's boarding house." Tucker nodded in approval. "Mrs. Chen runs a good place. My ranch hand Ellie's sister stays there." As they walked through the darkening streets, Tucker pointed out various landmarks in Prescott: the courthouse, the best places to purchase supplies, the streets to avoid after dark. His conversation was easy and undemanding, and Zara found herself relaxing slightly in his company. "What brings you to Prescott?" she asked, realizing she knew nothing about this man who had appeared twice in her path in as many days. "My ranch is about 10 miles outside of town," Tucker explained. "I had to deliver some horses to a buyer in Santa Fe, and I was on my way back." "Thunder, that's my horse doesn't much care for trains, as you might have noticed." "I did notice," Zara smiled, remembering the magnificent animal's reluctance to enter the stock car. "He's beautiful." "And he knows it," Tucker chuckled. "That's part of the problem." They reached the boarding house all too soon, and Zara found herself strangely reluctant to say goodbye to this kind stranger who had momentarily distracted her from her troubles. "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Owens." Tucker, she said, standing at the bottom of the steps that led to Mrs. Chen's front porch. "My pleasure, Miss Silverton." He replaced his hat and stepped back. "I wish you well with your new position. Perhaps I'll see you at the Silver Dollar sometime." "Perhaps," Zara agreed, though she doubted a rancher would have much cause to dine at the hotel when he had his own home nearby. As Tucker turned to leave, a thought struck her. "Tucker," she called softly. He paused, looking back at her with raised eyebrows. "How did you know I was from Las Lunas?" "I don't recall mentioning it." A slow smile spread across his face. "I make it my business to notice things, Miss Silverton. Good night." With that cryptic response, he disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving Zara to wonder about the enigmatic rancher who seemed to have appointed himself her informal guide to Prescott. The following weeks passed in a blur of exhausting work and sleepless nights. Zara quickly learned that serving in a hotel dining room was far more demanding than anything she had experienced in her privileged life. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, and her hands grew rough from carrying heavy trays and washing dishes when the kitchen was short-staffed. Yet there was an unexpected freedom in her new life. For the first time, she answered to no one but herself. Her earnings, meager though they were, belonged entirely to her. The other servers and kitchen staff, initially wary of her refined speech and manners, gradually accepted her as she proved willing to work as hard as any of them. One evening, about a month after her arrival in Prescott, Zara was assigned to serve in the private dining room where a group of local ranchers and merchants were holding a meeting. As she entered with a tray of coffee, she was surprised to see Tucker Owens among them. Deep in conversation with a gray-haired man she recognized as the mayor of Prescott. Tucker glanced up as she approached, his expression registering surprise before he smiled in greeting. "Miss Silverton," he acknowledged with a nod. "Good evening." "Mr. Owens," she replied professionally, setting down the coffee service with practiced efficiency. She was acutely aware of the curious glances from the other men at the table, and her cheeks warmed under their scrutiny. "Gentlemen, this is Miss Zara Silverton," Tucker said, apparently sensing her discomfort. "She's new to Prescott but already making a reputation as the most efficient server at the Silver Dollar." Zara was surprised by both his memory of her full name and his kind introduction. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. Will there be anything else for the table?" "Just the coffee for now, thank you," the mayor replied, studying her with newfound interest. As Zara left the room, she could hear the conversation resume, and Tucker's deep voice saying, "As I was explaining, gentlemen, the proposed rail spur would benefit not just my ranch but all the operations along the Verde Valley." Later, as she was clearing dishes from another table, Tucker approached her, his hat in his hands. "Miss Silverton, I hope I didn't embarrass you earlier," he said quietly. "I merely wished to prevent any uncomfortable questions." Zara appreciated his discretion. "Not at all, Mr. Owens." "Thank you for the introduction." He hesitated, then said, "I notice you've dropped the Tucker in favor of the more formal address." "It seemed more appropriate in a professional setting," she explained, balancing a stack of plates carefully. "And outside a professional setting?" he asked, his expression unreadable. Zara was saved from answering by the appearance of her supervisor, who gave Tucker an obsequious smile. "Mr. Owens, I trust everything was to your satisfaction this evening." "Perfectly, Mr. Hargrove," Tucker assured him, though his eyes remained on Zara. "Your staff is exemplary." When the supervisor moved away, Tucker lowered his voice. "I ride into town most Sundays. If you're free tomorrow afternoon, I'd be pleased to show you some of the countryside. It's beautiful this time of year." The invitation caught Zara completely off guard. She hadn't considered that Tucker might have any interest in her beyond casual acquaintance. Sundays were her only day off, and she usually spent them resting or writing letters to Catherine that she knew might never reach her sister. "That's very kind," she said cautiously, "but I'm not sure it would be proper. We could bring Mrs. Chen's niece as a chaperone," Tucker suggested quickly. "Lai Y is about your age, I believe, and she's expressed interest in seeing more of the territory." The thought of escaping the confines of the town, even for an afternoon, was suddenly intensely appealing. "In that case, I accept your invitation. Thank you." Tucker's smile transformed his serious face. "Excellent. I'll arrange for a gentle mount for you and Lai Y. Shall we say 1 o'clock? Zara nodded, already anticipating the freedom of open spaces after weeks of confinement in the hotel and boarding house. The following day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp autumn air that invigorated the spirits. Zara spent the morning carefully mending her one riding skirt, which she had packed more out of sentiment than practicality. By the time Tucker arrived at the boarding house with 3 horses in tow, she was waiting on the porch with Lai Y, a shy but friendly young woman who had grown up in San Francisco. "Ladies," Tucker greeted them, his eyes lingering on Zara in a way that made her heart beat faster. "I've brought Daisy for you, Miss Silverton. She's gentle but spirited. I thought you might appreciate that combination." Zara approached the dappled gray mare, who watched her with intelligent eyes. "She's lovely," she said, offering her hand for the horse to sniff. The animal nickered softly and pushed her nose against Zara's palm. "She likes you," Tucker observed, helping Lai Y mount a placid bay gelding. "Have you ridden much?" "I grew up riding," Zara admitted, accepting his assistance to mount side saddle. The familiar position brought a rush of memories galloping across the Silverton lands with her father before she had disappointed him so thoroughly. Once they were all mounted, Tucker led them away from town along a well-worn trail that followed the course of a small creek. The landscape was dramatically different from the flat expanses around Las Lunas, with rolling hills covered in scrub and patches of pine forest. "This is all part of Prescott National Forest," Tucker explained as they rode. "Some of the most beautiful country in the Arizona Territory, if you ask me." Lai Y proved to be a pleasant companion, sharing stories of her childhood in California and asking thoughtful questions about Zara's life before Prescott. Zara was careful to reveal little about her family's status or the circumstances that had driven her west, saying only that she had decided to seek independence away from home. As they rode, Tucker pointed out landmarks and shared the history of the area, from the earliest indigenous inhabitants to the recent mining booms that had brought an influx of settlers to the territory. "My father came here in '64, he told them, guiding his chestnut stallion alongside Zara's mare. "He was looking for silver but found good grazing land instead, started with 10 head of cattle and built up from there." "And your mother?" Zara asked, curious about this man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. A shadow crossed Tucker's face. "She died when I was 15, influenza." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly, recognizing the pain of loss in his expression. "It was a long time ago," he replied, his smile returning. "My father passed 3 years back, so now it's just me and my younger brother Caleb running the Circle O Ranch. He's back at the ranch today, keeping an eye on things." They stopped at a scenic overlook where the land fell away to reveal a stunning vista of mountains in the distance. Tucker produced a simple picnic from his saddlebags: bread, cheese, dried fruit, and canteens of water which they shared while sitting on a sun-warmed rock. "It's so peaceful here," Zara said, gazing out at the landscape. "So different from—" She caught herself before mentioning Las Lunas specifically. "From where you came from," Tucker finished, his gaze perceptive. Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak without revealing too much. Lai Y, sensing the shift in mood, tactfully mentioned that she wanted to sketch the view and moved a short distance away with her small notebook and pencil. "You don't talk much about your past," Tucker observed, his tone careful rather than prying. "There's not much to tell that would interest anyone," Zara replied, focusing on breaking a piece of bread into small crumbs. "I doubt that very much," Tucker said quietly. "But I respect your privacy, Miss Silverton. Just know that if you ever need a friend to listen, I'm available." Zara looked up, meeting his warm brown eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. The offer of friendship was touching, especially given how lonely she had felt since arriving in Prescott. "Now," Tucker said, his tone lightening, "shall I tell you about the time I had to rescue a mountain lion cub from a flash flood and ended up with the mama cat chasing me up a tree?" Zara laughed, grateful for the change of subject, and the remainder of the afternoon passed pleasantly with Tucker sharing entertaining stories of his life as a rancher. By the time they returned to town, the sun was setting, painting the sky in spectacular shades of orange and pink. "Thank you for a wonderful day," Zara told Tucker as he helped her dismount outside the boarding house. His hands at her waist were strong and steady, and for a brief moment as she slid to the ground, they were standing very close together. "The pleasure was mine," he replied, his voice deeper than usual. "Perhaps we could do it again sometime. Lai Y, already dismounted and standing nearby, cleared her throat pointedly, reminding them of her presence. Zara stepped back, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "I would like that," she admitted, surprising herself with her boldness. Tucker's smile was worth the momentary impropriety. "Then I'll call on you next Sunday if I may," Zara nodded, unable to suppress her answering smile. "Good night, Tucker." "Good night, Zara," he replied, the familiar use of her first name sending an unexpected thrill through her. As she watched him ride away, leading Lai Y's mount beside his own, Zara realized that for the first time since leaving Las Lunas, she was looking forward to the future instead of dwelling on the past. The following weeks established a pattern: grueling work at the hotel during the week, and Sundays spent in Tucker's company, sometimes with Lai Y as chaperone, sometimes meeting in public places like the town square or the small lending library. Tucker was unfailingly respectful, yet Zara could sense his growing interest in her, an interest she found herself reciprocating despite her determination to remain independent. On one such Sunday in late November, they were walking through town after attending the morning church service when Tucker suddenly steered her toward the telegraph office. "I need to check if there's been a response about those Hereford cattle I'm considering," he explained, holding the door open for her. Inside the office, the clerk greeted Tucker by name. "Morning, Mr. Owens. Got a telegram for you that came in yesterday, and there's one for Miss Silverton as well." Zara froze. "For me?" No one knew she was in Prescott except. "It must be a mistake," she said quickly. The clerk shook his head. "No mistake. Got your name right here. Miss Zara Silverton, care of Mrs. Chen's boarding house, Prescott, Arizona Territory." With a trembling hand, Zara accepted the telegram. Tucker, sensing her distress, guided her to a bench outside the office before opening his own message. "Bad news?" he asked gently when she continued to stare at the unopened paper. "I don't know. Only my sister knows where I am, and she would only contact me if—" Zara couldn't finish the thought. If Catherine had risked their father's wrath to send a telegram, it must be serious. Taking a deep breath, she unfolded the paper. "Zara, stop father gravely ill, stop doctors say little time left, stop he asks for you, stop please come home, stop Catherine, stop." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Her father, the man who had disowned her, was dying and asking for her. Despite everything, the news pierced her heart. "Zara." Tucker's concerned voice seemed to come from far away. "What is it?" Wordlessly, she handed him the telegram, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Tucker read it quickly, his expression somber. "Your father is ill." It wasn't a question, but Zara nodded anyway, wiping her tears with her handkerchief. "I have to go back," she said, her voice barely audible. "Even after everything, I have to go." "Of course you do," Tucker agreed, his hand covering hers in a comforting gesture. "When will you leave?" "The next train east," Zara decided, her mind already racing ahead to the practical details. "I'll need to speak with Mr. Hargrove about leaving my position, and Mrs. Chen about my room." "I'll help you make arrangements," Tucker offered without hesitation. Zara looked at him gratefully. "Thank you, but I can't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask, I offered." His expression was determined. "Friends help each other, Zara. Let me do this for you." In the whirlwind of activity that followed, Tucker proved himself an invaluable ally. He secured her a ticket on the eastbound train leaving the following morning, spoke with Mr. Hargrove about holding her position should she wish to return, and even provided a small loan to supplement her savings for the journey. "It's not charity," he insisted when Zara protested. "It's an investment in your return." The night before her departure, Zara sat in her small room at the boarding house, packing the few possessions she had acquired during her time in Prescott. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Zara, may I speak with you a moment, Mrs. Chen's voice called quietly. Opening the door, Zara found not only Mrs. Chen but also Lai Wei waiting in the hallway. "Mr. Owens is downstairs," Mrs. Chen informed her. "He has asked to speak with you privately before you leave. I have told him he may use the parlor, and Lai Wei will be in the adjoining room with the door open." The arrangement was as close to proper as circumstances allowed, and Zara appreciated the older woman's discretion. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Downstairs, Tucker was waiting by the fireplace, his hat in his hands and an uncharacteristically nervous expression on his face. He straightened when she entered the room. "Zara," he greeted her, his voice warm. "I hope I'm not interrupting your preparations." "Not at all," she assured him, taking a seat on the small sofa and gesturing for him to join her. "I've nearly finished packing." Tucker sat beside her, leaving a respectable distance between them. "I wanted to see you before you left," he began, his usual confidence seemingly deserting him. "To give you this." He held out a small package wrapped in brown paper. Surprised, Zara accepted it, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Open it," he encouraged. Inside was a slim leather-bound journal with her initials stamped in gold on the cover. "Tucker, it's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the soft leather. "I thought you might want to write down your thoughts during the journey," he explained. "And—" he hesitated, then continued more quietly, "I hoped you might use it to write to me as well. Not proper letters, perhaps, but thoughts you might share if I were there beside you." The gift touched Zara deeply, not just for its thoughtfulness but for what it represented: Tucker's hope that their connection would endure despite the distance and uncertainty ahead. "Thank you," she said softly. "I will treasure it." Tucker's expression grew serious. "Zara, I know we've known each other only a short time, and I know you're facing a difficult situation with your family. I won't presume to ask for promises or commitments now. But I want you to know that whatever happens in Las Lunas, you have a place to return to here in Prescott. Not just a job or a room at Mrs. Chen's, but—" he took a deep breath, "a place in my life if you should want it." Zara's heart raced at his words, which were as close to a declaration of affection as propriety allowed under the circumstances. "Tucker, he gently placed a finger against her lips, stopping her words. "Don't answer now. Go to your family, do what you need to do. Then decide." Removing his finger, he leaned forward and, with exquisite gentleness, pressed his lips to her forehead in a brief, chaste kiss. "Safe journey, Zara Silverton," he whispered. "I'll be waiting to hear your decision when you return." The journey back to Las Lunas seemed both interminable and far too swift. Zara spent much of it writing in Tucker's journal, recording her confused feelings about returning to the family that had rejected her, and her growing affection for the rancher, whose steady presence had become so important to her in such a short time. When the train finally pulled into the Las Lunas station, Zara was surprised to see William waiting for her on the platform, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Zara," he said stiffly, taking her valise, "thank you for coming. How is father?" she asked, following him to a waiting carriage emblazoned with the Silverton crest. William's face was grim. "Not good. The doctor says it's his heart. He could go any day now." The Silverton mansion looked exactly as Zara remembered it, its imposing facade a symbol of the wealth and status her family had accumulated over decades. As the carriage pulled up to the front entrance, Catherine burst through the door, rushing down the steps to embrace her sister. "You came," Catherine whispered, her tears dampening Zara's travel-worn dress. "I wasn't sure you would." "Of course I came," Zara replied, holding her sister tightly. "How could I not?" Inside, the house was unnaturally quiet, with servants moving silently through the hallways and speaking in hushed voices. Catherine led Zara to her old bedroom, which remained unchanged, as though waiting for her return. "Mother wanted everything kept as it was," Catherine explained, watching as Zara took in the familiar surroundings. "She never believed you wouldn't come back eventually." "And father?" Zara asked, removing her hat and gloves. Catherine's expression faltered. "He forbade your name to be mentioned, but sometimes I would find him in your room, just sitting in the chair by the window." The image of her proud, unyielding father secretly visiting her empty room was almost too painful to contemplate. "When can I see him?" "The doctor is with him now." "As soon as he leaves, I'll take you in." An hour later, Zara stood outside her father's bedroom door, her heart pounding. Catherine squeezed her hand encouragingly. "He's been asking for you since yesterday. Go on." The room was dimly lit, heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The large four-poster bed that had dominated the room since Zara's childhood now seemed to dwarf the figure lying beneath the covers. Richard Silverton, once robust and commanding, had been reduced to a pale shadow of himself. "Father," Zara said softly, approaching the bed. Richard's eyes, sunken in their sockets, fluttered open. For a moment he seemed confused, then recognition dawned. "Zara," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "You came." "Of course I came," she replied, taking his frail hand in hers. The skin was paper-thin, blue veins visible beneath the surface. "I was wrong," Richard said, each word clearly an effort. "About the Vasquez boy, about many things." Zara swallowed past the lump in her throat. "Father, you don't need to." "I do," he insisted, his grip tightening fractionally on her hand. "Pride, too much pride, cost me my daughter. Can you forgive an old fool?" Tears streamed down Zara's face as she leaned forward to kiss her father's forehead. "There's nothing to forgive. I'm here now." A ghost of a smile touched Richard's lips. "My Zara, always had your mother's heart, and my stubbornness." He closed his eyes, exhausted by the brief exchange, and soon his breathing settled into the rhythm of sleep. Zara remained by his side, holding his hand and watching the rise and fall of his chest, each breath a precious gift that might be the last. In the days that followed, Zara divided her time between her father's bedside and reconnecting with her mother and siblings. Eleanor Silverton embraced her prodigal daughter with tears and apologies for not standing against Richard's decree more firmly. William, initially standoffish, gradually warmed to her presence, especially when she shared stories of her time in Prescott without bitterness or reproach. To Zara's surprise, Mateo Vasquez had returned to Las Lunas after completing his medical studies. It was he, in fact, who served as the town's new doctor and who attended Richard Silverton in his final days. Their first meeting was awkward, taking place in the hallway outside her father's room after one of Mateo's visits. "Zara," he said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's good to see you." "And you, Mateo," she replied, studying the changes in him. He was more confident now, his bearing that of a professional who had found his place in the world. "Thank you for caring for my father." "I'm doing what I can to make him comfortable," Mateo said, his expression compassionate. "I won't lie to you, his condition is grave." Zara nodded, appreciating his honesty. "I know. We're grateful for your attention." An awkward silence fell between them, the ghosts of their past hovering in the air. "I should have written to you," Mateo finally said, "after I left, to explain properly." "It doesn't matter now," Zara assured him, surprised to find that it truly didn't. The pain of his abandonment, once so acute, had faded to a dull memory. "We were both young and the circumstances were impossible." Relief washed over Mateo's features. "You're very generous." "I've regretted my weakness ever since. I should have stood up to your father." Zara smiled sadly. Perhaps, but I've learned that life rarely follows the path we expect. Sometimes the detours lead us where we're meant to be all along. Mateo studied her face. You've changed, Zara. There's a strength in you that wasn't there before. I've had to find it, she replied simply. When you have no one to rely on but yourself, you discover what you're capable of. Are you? Mateo hesitated, clearly unsure how to ask the question. Is there someone in Arizona? The image of Tucker's face rose in Zara's mind, bringing with it a warmth that surprised her with its intensity. Perhaps, she acknowledged. It's complicated. Mateo nodded in understanding. I'm glad, he said sincerely. You deserve happiness, Zara. As he turned to leave, Zara called after him. Mateo, he looked back questioningly. For what it's worth, I think you've become exactly the kind of doctor you always wanted to be. Las Lunas is fortunate to have you. His smile was genuine. Thank you, Zara. That means more than you know. On the 8th day after Zara's return to Las Lunas, Richard Silverton passed away peacefully in his sleep. His family gathered around his bed. His final words had been a whispered "I'm sorry" to Zara, who had held his hand until the end. The funeral was attended by nearly everyone in Las Lunas, a testament to the Silverton family's standing in the community. As the town's leading citizens filed past to offer their condolences, Zara found herself watching their faces, wondering how many had gossiped about her disgrace, and how many had truly cared about her father beyond his wealth and influence. In the days following the funeral, the family met with Richard's lawyer to discuss the will. To everyone's surprise, Richard had amended his testament shortly after falling ill, reinstating Zara as an heir and specifically bequeathing her a portion of land, and a sum of money that had been her maternal grandmother's dowry. He wanted to ensure your independence, the lawyer explained as he handed Zara the relevant documents. He said you had proven you could make your own way, but he wanted you to have choices. The inheritance was substantial enough to allow Zara complete freedom in deciding her future. She could remain in Las Lunas, establish herself in any city in the country, or return to Prescott with the means to build a new life there. As the family gathered in the study after the lawyer's departure, Elena turned to her eldest daughter. What will you do now, Zara? We would all love for you to stay. Zara looked around at the faces of her family, her mother's hopeful expression, Catherine's understanding smile, William's newfound respect. She loved them all, and the healing that had begun with her father's last days had continued in the shared grief of his passing. Yet she knew with certainty that her future lay elsewhere. I need to return to Prescott, she said gently. At least for a time. There are matters I need to resolve. Is there someone waiting for you there? Catherine asked perceptively. Zara thought of Tucker, his steady presence, his quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Yes, she admitted. Someone who showed me kindness when I needed it most. Then you must go to him, Elena said firmly. But remember that you always have a home here now. Your father's last gift to you was the freedom to choose your own path without fear or constraint. 2 weeks after her father's funeral, Zara boarded the westbound train once more, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She had promised her family she would write regularly and consider visiting for Christmas, regardless of what the future held. The journal Tucker had given her was filled now with her thoughts and feelings during her time in Las Lunas, her reconciliation with her father, her rediscovered connection with her family, and most importantly, her growing certainty about what she wanted for her future. As the train neared Prescott, Zara's anticipation grew. She had sent a telegram ahead to Mrs. Chen, announcing her return, but had asked the landlady not to inform anyone else. She wanted to surprise Tucker, to see his face when she appeared unannounced. The Prescott station was busy with the usual afternoon activity when Zara disembarked. She collected her luggage considerably more substantial than when she had left, thanks to her mother's insistence on sending her with a proper wardrobe, and hired a carriage to take her to the Circle O Ranch. The journey took nearly an hour along dusty roads that wound through the beautiful landscape Zara had come to love during her Sunday rides with Tucker. When the driver finally turned onto a long drive marked by a wooden arch bearing the ranch's brand, Zara's pulse quickened. The main house was a sprawling single-story structure built of sturdy logs and local stone, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings and corrals were visible beyond it, and in the distance, cattle grazed on the rolling grassland. As the carriage pulled up before the house, a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Tucker emerged from one of the barns. He approached cautiously, curiosity evident in his expression. "Can I help you, madam?" he asked, removing his hat politely. "You must be Caleb," Zara said, smiling at Tucker's younger brother. "I'm Zara Silverton. I'm looking for Tucker." Recognition dawned in Caleb's eyes. "Miss Silverton, Tucker's mentioned you often. He's out checking the north pasture, but he should be back shortly. Won't you come inside?" Caleb helped her down from the carriage and instructed the driver to leave her luggage on the porch. As he led her into the house, Zara was struck by its comfortable, lived-in feeling. The main room was spacious, with a stone fireplace at one end and large windows that let in the afternoon sun. The furniture was solid and well-made, if not fancy, and bookshelves lined one wall. "Tucker didn't mention you were returning," Caleb remarked as he offered her a seat. "He's been like a bear with a sore paw since you left." Zara laughed at the description. "I wanted to surprise him." "I hope that's all right." "More than all right," Caleb assured her. "Would you like some coffee while you wait? Our housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins, makes a fine cup." Before Zara could respond, the sound of hoofbeats approached the house, followed by the creak of the front door opening. "Caleb, whose carriage is that outside?" Tucker's deep voice called. "You have a visitor," Caleb replied, a grin spreading across his face as he nodded toward the sitting area. Tucker rounded the corner, still in his riding clothes, and stopped dead in his tracks when he saw Zara. For a long moment, he simply stared as though unable to believe his eyes. "Zara," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "Is it really you?" She stood, suddenly shy under his intense gaze. "It's me," she confirmed softly. "I've come back." Tucker took a step toward her, then seemed to remember his brother's presence. "Caleb," he said without taking his eyes off Zara, "would you mind giving us a moment?" "Of course," Caleb replied, his amusement evident. "I'll just go check on that thing. That needs checking, far away from here." He slipped out the door, closing it behind him. Once they were alone, Tucker closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle as though she might disappear if he pressed too firmly. "I didn't know if you'd come back," he admitted, his eyes searching hers. "I hoped, but I didn't know." Zara lifted her own hands to cover his. "My father died," she said simply. "We reconciled before the end. He changed his will, leaving me enough to be independent." "I'm sorry about your father," Tucker said sincerely, "but I'm selfishly glad you're here." "I brought something for you," Zara told him, reaching into her reticule to withdraw the journal he had given her. "You asked me to write my thoughts to share with you." Tucker took the journal, his expression solemn. "And did you?" "Every day," she confirmed. "You can read it later, but there's one entry I'd like to share with you now." She took the journal back from him, opening it to a page marked with a ribbon. "This is what I wrote the night before I left Las Lunas," she explained. "Then read aloud." I have been thinking about what Tucker said before I left Prescott, that I have a place in his life if I want it. As I prepare to leave my childhood home once more, I realize with absolute clarity that I do want it. I want the life that waits for me in Arizona, with its vast skies and rugged beauty. Most of all, I want the man who showed me what love truly is. Not possession or control, but respect and partnership. Tucker Owens has taught me that love doesn't diminish our independence, it strengthens it, because we choose freely to share our lives with another. Tomorrow I will board the train to Prescott, not as a banished daughter fleeing her past, but as a woman embracing her future. When she finished reading, Zara closed the journal and looked up to find Tucker's eyes shining with emotion. "Zara Silverton," he said, his voice husky, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" She smiled, her heart full to bursting. "I'm saying that if your offer still stands, I would very much like a place in your life, Tucker Owens." Tucker's answering smile was radiant. "The offer doesn't just stand, it's been expanded. I don't just want to give you a place in my life, Zara. I want to share every part of it with you as my wife if you'll have me." Zara's breath caught at the unexpected proposal. "Tucker, are you certain? We've known each other only a short time, and I'm not the simple girl you might have thought." "I never thought you were simple," he interrupted, his expression earnest. "I knew from the moment I saw you on that train platform that you were extraordinary. Everything I've learned about you since has only confirmed it. Your courage, your determination, your kindness. I love every part of you, Zara Silverton, and I want nothing more than to spend my life showing you just how much." Tears of joy filled Zara's eyes. "Then my answer is yes, Tucker Owens. I will marry you." Tucker's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. "May I kiss you now?" he asked, his voice a whisper against her lips. "Please," she breathed, and then his mouth was on hers, gentle at first, then with growing passion as she responded to his touch. It was a kiss that spoke of promises kept and futures shared, of hardships overcome and joys to come. When they finally parted, both breathless, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably tell you that Caleb is watching us through the window," he murmured, amusement coloring his tone. Zara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Then perhaps we should invite him in to hear our news," Tucker nodded, taking her hand and entwining their fingers. "And then I want to show you the rest of the ranch, our ranch, if you'll share it with me." "I will," Zara promised, knowing with absolute certainty that she had found where she belonged. They were married 3 months later in a simple ceremony at the Prescott church, with Zara's family traveling from Las Lunas for the occasion. Eleanor Silverton embraced Tucker warmly, thanking him for bringing happiness to her daughter's life, while Catherine immediately bonded with Caleb over their shared experience as younger siblings. To Zara's surprise, William had brought a guest, a young woman named Rebecca, who was studying to be a teacher, and who looked at William with unmistakable affection. It seemed that Zara's example had inspired her brother to look beyond their social circle for companionship. After the wedding, the newlyweds settled into life at the Circle O, with Zara quickly proving herself as capable in managing the household as she was in helping with the ranch's business affairs. Her inheritance allowed them to expand their operations, purchasing additional breeding stock and improving the ranch's facilities. As the seasons changed and their love deepened, Zara often thought of the strange twist of fate that had brought her to Arizona. If her father hadn't banished her, if Mateo hadn't left, if she hadn't boarded that westbound train, any change in that chain of events would have led her down a different path, away from the happiness she had found with Tucker. One evening, a year after their wedding, Zara sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Tucker joined her, settling into the chair beside hers and taking her hand. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Owens," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Zara smiled at the name she still hadn't tired of hearing. "I was just thinking about journeys," she replied. "How the most difficult ones often lead us to the most beautiful destinations." Tucker nodded, understanding in his eyes. Like a certain young woman who arrived in Prescott with nothing but a small valise and ended up capturing the heart of a lonely rancher. And like a certain rancher who showed that young woman what real love feels like, Zara added, leaning over to kiss him softly. Tucker's free hand came to rest on the gentle swell of her abdomen, where their first child was growing. "Our little one will have quite the story to tell about how his parents met," he observed. "Or her," Zara reminded him with a smile. "And yes, it's quite a story. From banishment to belonging, a journey I would take again in a heartbeat, as long as it led me to you." As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, they sat together in contented silence, watching the first stars appear above the land they shared. Zara had once believed that love was a luxury she might have to sacrifice for independence, but Tucker had shown her that true love was itself a form of freedom, the freedom to be fully herself, accepted and cherished for exactly who she was. In the years that followed, the Circle O Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Their family grew with the birth of a son, Richard Tucker Owens, followed 2 years later by twin daughters, Eleanor and Catherine. Caleb eventually married Lai Y, whose artistic talents had gained recognition throughout the territory, and they built a smaller house on the ranch property. Zara maintained close ties with her family in Las Lunas, visiting regularly and hosting them at the ranch each summer. The bitterness that had marked her departure gradually transformed into a deeper understanding between Zara and her mother and siblings, strengthened by their shared love and mutual respect. On Zara and Tucker's 5th wedding anniversary, they hosted a gathering at the ranch for family and friends. As they watched their children playing with their cousins under the watchful eye of Zara Silverton, Tucker wrapped his arm around Zara's waist. "Are you happy, my love?" he asked, his voice low in her ear. Zara turned in his embrace, facing the man who had shown her the true meaning of love. His face was more weathered now, with fine lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled, but his gaze held the same warmth and steadfastness that had first drawn her to him. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she assured him, rising on her toes to kiss him. "You gave me a home when I had none, Tucker Owens. Not just this ranch, but here." She placed her hand over his heart, feeling its strong, steady beat beneath her palm. "You showed me that love isn't a cage, it's the key that sets us free." Tucker's arms tightened around her. "And you, Zara Owens, taught me that sometimes the best things in life arrive unexpectedly, on a westbound train with nothing but courage and determination." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors that had welcomed Zara to Arizona territory all those years ago, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged, not in spite of the hardships she had endured, but because of them. Her father's rejection had set her on a path to discover a love stronger and truer than anything she had known before, a love built on respect, partnership, and the freedom to be herself. And that, Zara reflected as she rested in her husband's embrace, was a journey worth every step along the way.